Before we begin, if you enjoy stories where humanity stands tall against impossible odds, where forgotten legends awaken and justice returns with fire, then make sure to subscribe. Here, we don't just tell sci-fi, we tell HFY, humanity, VO. Yeah, stories that leave a mark. Now let's begin. They called them gods, ancient beings who once shaped the stars with their thoughts. They vanished long ago, their name drifting into myth, until one day, they came back. They returned not with wisdom, but with demands. They wanted worship, obedience, silence, and when the galaxy hesitated, they burned planets until the stars bowed again. One by one, civilizations knelt, begging for mercy, all except one. Earth did not answer. Earth did not kneel, because Earth remembered. And what the galaxy had forgotten was that you don't wake humanity unless you're ready for judgment. The galaxy had been quiet for a long time. Trade routes flowed without fear. The great coalitions and republics debated, endlessly but rarely drew blood. Border skirmishes flared and faded. Pirates prowled the edges. But true war, true extinction had become a memory. No one remembered the last time a planet was glassed. No one feared the stars. And that was the mistake. Because while the galaxy slept, something ancient stirred. They came from beyond the rim, beyond mapped space, from places marked on no chart, only whispered of in pre-assembly texts, cosmic entities spoken of in metaphor, in symbols carved into ruins older than light drives. They didn't announce themselves. They appeared. Their ships weren't ships. They were structures of light and black stone moving without engines, blinking in and out of existence like thoughts. They didn't need weapons. Their presence rewrote physics. Stars dimmed when they passed. Moons cracked from gravitational dissonance. Entire defense grids went blind just from scanning them. The first to fall was Chirex 9, a planet with 5 orbital fleets and a shield net that had held for 3 centuries. The gods landed. No resistance was recorded. No shots fired. And 3 hours later, the planet was quiet. No messages. No survivors. Just a single symbol etched into the crust, miles wide. A circle. A spiral. A crown of thorns. It appeared again on the next world and the next. They called themselves the Ascendant. They claimed to be the return of the divine. The original creators. The ones who had once uplifted early civilizations, then left in disgust when their children became arrogant. Now, they said, they had come back to restore balance. Balance, of course, meant obedience. The Galactic Assembly sent envoys, diplomats, scientists. Some never returned. Some did, changed, broken, eyes wide, words hollow, minds filled with something that didn't fit inside them. The Ascendant made their intentions clear. Worship us or be unmade. They offered power, long life, even the revival of extinct species, if you served. Entire systems bent the knee in fear. Some went willingly. Most were given no choice, because resistance meant removal. And still, one world had not responded, a quiet blue world near a dying sun, tucked away in an arm of the galaxy long since ignored, Earth. The Ascendant sent a message. A herald construct, cloaked in light and song, descended upon the Sol system. It passed Neptune. It passed Mars. It approached Earth orbit without resistance. There were no Terran warships waiting, no planetary shields, no defensive broadcasts, just silence. So the construct made contact. It sent a signal to Earth's surface, a coded demand for acknowledgement, for surrender, for fealty. There was no answer. It waited. It sent the message again. And still, Earth was silent, until the construct's sensors picked up something strange. Beneath the surface of the planet, deep under layers of old soil and metal. A signal, faint, ancient, a single Terran word, observed. And then the construct vanished. No explosion, No trace, just gone. And for the first time in their long return, the Ascendant paused, because long ago, long before the galaxy forgot, there had been a warning passed down by the oldest species, a whisper carved into stone in languages lost to time. Do not wake Earth. It does not kneel. It judges. And now Earth had opened its eyes. By the time the Ascendant reached the inner worlds, Earth was considered little more than a shadow of its former self. The great galactic records listed it as a cultural relic, a birthplace of a once powerful species that had chosen isolation over relevance. Most civilizations had erased Earth from serious discussion long ago. It was old, quiet, and disinterested in diplomacy. The Terran Council had withdrawn from the Galactic Assembly 300 years earlier without explanation. Its colonies vanished from star charts one by one. Its trading lanes went cold. Even its automated probes ceased transmitting. And after a while, the galaxy simply stopped asking questions. The general belief was that humanity had either collapsed inward, consumed by its own ambition, or had chosen exile from the noise of the stars. Either way, they were gone, forgotten, a myth in a universe that no longer had time for myths. But Earth hadn't disappeared. It had been listening. Beneath its quiet skies and abandoned spaceports, beneath the oceans and forests and still-burning city cores, a machine web deeper than any planetary crust whispered to itself in pulses no longer detectable. By standard technology, Earth didn't forget the galaxy. It remembered everything: the betrayals, the wars, the peace that never held, the empires that rose with promises and fell with greed. The way the Assembly had turned into a council of cowards, and the return of the Ascendant, wasn't a surprise. It was predicted, because Earth hadn't gone dormant. It had prepared. Underneath the polar caps, hidden within asteroids orbiting, in false trajectories cloaked inside the ruins of ancient Terran cities, there were watchers, AI constructs older than the current generation of species, sentinels, guardians, not awake. Not yet, but they stirred when the first God construct approached. The signal that came back from Earth's surface, observed, wasn't just a warning. It was confirmation. The construct had been analyzed, dismantled, and removed from existence, not through brute force, but through understanding. Earth didn't destroy it. Earth unwrote it. And for the first time in its return, the Ascendant had encountered something it couldn't classify, that terrified them more than resistance, because the last time they had crossed Earth, they had nearly died. Back then, humanity had been young, eager, reckless, still rising. Even then, it had been the one force in the galaxy the Ascendant couldn't fully conquer. And now, Earth had matured. No longer interested in approval, no longer looking to prove itself. Now it waited, like a judge in a high court, robe already on, gavel in hand. The Ascendant debated in private halls cloaked in subspace. Their discussions bent light, distorted time. They feared panic. They feared a pattern repeating. So they sent no more envoys. No more messages. They sent a fleet, a divine armada. Ships of star matter and reality warping. Vessels designed not to fight, but to remind the galaxy that resistance was pointless. They arrived in orbit over Earth 3 days later. Still, Earth was quiet. No alarms, no warships, no orbital weapons. Just clouds, continents, and oceans below. And then, without a single launch or shot fired, everything stopped. The fleet hung there, completely frozen, systems locked, consciousness halted, propulsion dead. It wasn't EMP. It wasn't sabotage. It was something more terrifying. Earth had simply disagreed with their presence, and the laws of physics obeyed Earth's will. From deep within its crust, an ancient satellite activated. It hadn't moved in 500 years. It didn't have a name. Just a code burned into its alloy hull, TR-01, Judgment. The satellite pulsed once, and every Ascendant ship in orbit vanished. No explosion. No debris. No flame. Just gone. The sky over Earth was clear again, and from the ruins of long deactivated Terran command centers across the galaxy, Ancient systems came back online, and one word appeared, all at once, across every Terran military node: awaken. The word rippled through Earth's buried infrastructure like lightning through dry air. Awaken. It didn't appear on public channels. It didn't light up news feeds. It wasn't shouted in a command bunker or screamed from a mountaintop. It simply was. Every dormant protocol, every sealed vault, every silenced satellite came online. And the old systems, the ones most of the galaxy believed had long rusted away, activated as if they'd only just blinked. Deep beneath what used to be Terran High Command, buried under centuries of silence, command doors hissed open to no one. Lights flickered to life over sealed cryo chambers. Vaults marked echelon red unlocked, exposing technologies older than modern star charts. There was no panic, no scrambling. This was preparation finishing its cycle. Earth had never intended to rule the stars. It had simply learned that one day it might have to clean them. And that day had arrived. Across the farthest Terran colonies, some hidden, some thought extinct, automated signal arrays pulsed out the old code, JR protocol. Judgment Reborn. The name wasn't poetic. It was a promise. Centuries earlier, after humanity's last great war, the decision had been made to withdraw. Not out of cowardice, not from defeat but from clarity. The stars had grown too arrogant. The assembly had become toothless. And the gods, yes, even then the myths of the ascendant lingered, had been watched for signs of return. So humanity went dark. It didn't abandon the galaxy. It reset its footing. It built deeper instead of louder. Smaller fleets, but impossible to track. Weapons that weren't designed to kill but to remove, to erase, to judge. Because Earth had learned something the galaxy had forgotten. You don't have to be everywhere. You just have to be ready. Now, with the ascendant revealed, Earth was no longer resting. One by one, ships lifted from dry docks no one knew existed. They didn't shine. They didn't broadcast. They simply rose, casting long shadows over long dead cities powered by cores the rest of the galaxy had outlawed, not for morality but for fear. The first of them, Vigil, Resolute, Iron Dream, bore no national banners, no logos, only one mark on their hulls, a circle, split down the center, encircled by 3 lines, each representing one core belief: observation, preparation, action. These were not warships. These were verdicts. Onboard systems came online with human and AI minds in tandem. No dominance, no override. Humanity hadn't chosen machines over itself. It had chosen balance. The officers stepping onto the command decks didn't wear medals or ranks. They wore black, unadorned uniforms, because this wasn't about glory, it was about completion. The old AI network, known as the Echo Grid, began, transmitting across subspace, using layered encryption only Earth's architecture could understand. And scattered across distant outposts and silent observatories, humanity's hidden assets began to stir. Orbital towers folded open like sleeping titans, solar archives realigned. Ancient antimatter reserves, long believed depleted, surged to full capacity. And Earth itself, long quiet, long disregarded, stood at the center of it all like a conductor. Before the first note, the Ascendant had wanted reverence. What they'd earned was reckoning. Earth didn't send warnings. It sent a message to the Ascendant, to the Assembly, to anyone who remembered the old myths and wondered if they were true. The message was short, plain language, unmistakable tone. The age of judgment has returned. We are not your children. We are not your worshippers. We are your conclusion. Across the galaxy, the Ascendant's agents felt it before they even read it. A pressure in the air, a silence they couldn't penetrate, a presence they couldn't explain. Because Earth wasn't rising in anger. Earth was rising in certainty. And when certainty awakens, gods fall. They met in silence. At the edge of a collapsed star system where gravity still whimpered from its own death, The first Terran fleet faced the Ascendant, not in formation, not arranged like a parade. They appeared one by one, folding out of space without flare like ghosts called to judgment. The Ascendant ships had already arrived. Massive, monolithic, alive. Each of their vessels pulsed with a dark radiance, shapes twisting as if grown from the bones of dead stars. They were beautiful in the way lightning is, terrible, elegant, and without mercy. Their arrival had bent space-time. Their intent radiated dominance. This system had been chosen not for strategy, but for symbolism. They were showing the galaxy. What happened to those who resisted? They had done it before, but not with Earth. Human ships were different. They didn't shine. They didn't speak. They simply existed and everything else adjusted. The lead Ascendant vessel moved first. A being of shimmering plasma stood at its bow, its voice carried through quantum thought channels. "You are late to kneel. This is your final offer." The human reply didn't come through traditional channels. It came from a single ship, the TRV Deliverance. Its hull was older than any surviving species flagship. Its records had been sealed for 3 centuries, and now its voice was calm, human, a woman's voice, tinged with something even the Ascendant hadn't heard in a very long time. Conviction. We weren't late. We were watching. And now, we've seen enough. And with that, Earth fired the first and final shot. Except it wasn't a shot. It was a fold, a ripple in localized space-time that passed through the lead Ascendant warship like a breeze. To the galaxy's sensors, nothing happened to the ship. Everything happened. The Ascendant vessel crumpled in silence. Not torn, not burned. It simply ceased to function. Every molecule separated. Every stream of thought unwound. The being that had spoken vanished mid-sentence. The remaining Ascendant fleet reacted, like a wounded animal startled by the sting it didn't expect. They surged forward, dozens of god ships unleashing waves of antimatter storms, psionic blasts, and dimension-rending rays. Earth's fleet didn't move. It adapted. Terran vessels didn't dodge. They shifted, slipping between states, absorbing energy and redirecting it without firing. Every time an Ascendant ship launched an assault, it found itself facing nothing, or worse, its own fire returned through mirrored timelines, because Earth didn't just build ships, it built understanding. Humanity had watched the Ascendant rise, had studied their myth, had recorded their structure, their tactics, their mistakes. Now that knowledge moved like breath across the battlefield. 3 more Ascendant ships fell. No debris, no drama, just completion. The galaxy watched in stunned silence. Live streams, long range, sensors, emergency broadcasts, billions saw it happen. The Ascendant who had promised obedience and demanded worship was bleeding, and not because of overwhelming firepower, because they were facing a force that wasn't angry, wasn't fearful. I wasn't even impressed. The Terran fleet's movements resembled a predator bored with the chase. Clean, precise, inevitable. One remaining Ascendant ship tried to retreat, its engines flaring as it attempted to fold out of local space. The TRV Deliverance intercepted its fold signature with a quantum anchor, a technology outlawed by the Assembly centuries ago. The Ascendant ship didn't make it. It stretched, froze, and then unraveled like a thought forgotten mid-sentence. No, scream, just silence, and then the Terran fleet turned away. They didn't wait for applause. They didn't destroy the remaining wreckage. They left it floating, untouched, so the galaxy could see. Because this wasn't the end. It was the opening statement. Humanity had entered the field, not as invaders, not as rebels, as judges, and the war of gods had truly begun. For so long, the galaxy had spoken of the Ascendant in whispers. They were beyond analysis, beyond resistance. The stories said they once carved rings around stars and breathed life into the void. When they returned, no one questioned their right to rule. They were the old gods, and gods do not fall. Until now. Because now the galaxy had seen them bleed. It had seen their ships fail, seen their voices silenced, seen entire formations disappear in the presence of vessels that made no sound, flew no flags, and claimed no territory, and that broke something deeper than armor. It broke belief. Across core worlds and border colonies, the panic turned to confusion. First came the disbelief. How could these divine beings, these starwalkers, be pushed back by humans? But then came the remembering. The old stories, buried beneath centuries of arrogance. The ancient records of the Terran Exodus. The warnings left behind by extinct species who once fought beside humanity and passed on one final truth. If ever the gods return, hope the Terrans wake first. Now those words were carved into every command terminal across the Alliance, printed in military halls, taught to children who watched silent footage of an ascendant warship folding like paper in the face of a single human signal. The myths were cracking, and for the ascendant, so was their control. Entire systems began to hesitate. Alliances once held by fear now whispered of rebellion. The Grolic people, once devout followers of the Ascendant, turned off their planetary beacons. The Dravek Combine halted tribute shipments and broadcast a single sentence to the stars. Earth stood, so will we. One by one, worlds stopped answering the Ascendant's call. The gods, who had never needed armies because belief was their weapon, felt the galaxy pulling away. And worse, they felt doubt for the first time in eons. Because this wasn't just war. This was loss of narrative. The Ascendant began responding erratically. Where once they appeared with calm precision, now they struck out with panic, burning colonies that had not yet resisted, lashing out at any world that dared even pause its tribute. It didn't help. Because everywhere they went, the people had already seen Earth's ships, and worse than Earth's power was Earth's silence. They didn't gloat, didn't celebrate, didn't even issue demands. They struck, corrected, moved on, and that terrified the Ascendant more than any weapon, because the galaxy has always feared loud tyrants, but it respects quiet certainty. On a moon orbiting a shattered world, a refugee broadcast a private message on an old Earth frequency. We were told they were gone. We were told they'd faded. But when the gods came, the stars remembered the truth. Earth isn't gone. It's just watching. The message went viral, not because of propaganda, because of hope. For so long, the people of the galaxy had believed they were alone against powers too vast to challenge. Now they knew something different, that somewhere out there, behind a blue planet and a quiet sun, there existed a species that didn't need belief to act. It needed only a reason, and the gods had given them one. Humanity never believed in gods, not the kind that demanded worship, not the ones that demanded silence. They had once carved myths and built temples like everyone else, but over time, they learned to ask questions, to test, to measure. And when things called themselves divine, humanity didn't kneel, they investigated. So when Earth's archives finally decrypted the Ascendant's oldest signals, traced through dark matter spectrums and layered across failed civilizations, it didn't see holiness, it saw design. The Ascendant weren't gods, they were constructs. Once creators, yes. Once builders of stargates and terraformers of barren rocks. Long ago, they had seeded life across galaxies and guided early evolution, like careful gardeners. But somewhere along the way, they changed. Records recovered from shattered relay stations and ruined temples told the real story. The Ascendant had once uplifted species, not to free them, but to control them. They granted technology in exchange for obedience, structure in exchange for loyalty. And when those species advanced too far, too fast, too independently, they were reset. That was the truth of the disappearances. That was why the oldest empires had vanished without war, not by time, but by removal. Humanity, it turned out, hadn't been the exception. They had been the problem, too fast, too chaotic, too unwilling to kneel. So the Ascendant abandoned Earth not out of mercy, but out of frustration. They declared it unworthy of guidance. dangerous to the balance they claimed to protect, and Earth in response went silent. Not out of fear, out of resolve. It studied, waited, built, and now Earth had seen behind the veil. The Ascendant's power wasn't divine. It was ancient, built on forgotten knowledge, maintained through fear, wrapped in ritual and awe until it became indistinguishable from magic to a galaxy too young to know better. But Earth knew better. And once that truth spread, once Earth broadcast it openly, backed by evidence, language keys, deconstructed energy, codes, the lie collapsed. The Ascendant had ruled through the illusion of omnipotence. Now their weapons were mapped, their technology understood, their tactics predictable. They weren't gods anymore. They were tyrants with old tools. And the galaxy finally saw them clearly. That clarity spread faster than any fleet. Worlds that had submitted without question began asking their own. If the Ascendant weren't divine, what else had they lied about? What other histories had they erased? What species had they silenced? And what did it mean that Earth, long ignored, long dismissed, had not only survived them, but was now defeating them? On a secured Terran channel, one recovered historian summarized it in a sentence. They were never gods. They were warnings. Earth was the response. And the Ascendant knew their time was short. They began consolidating, drawing back to their core systems, not to rebuild, but to protect a single entity. The last, the first, the source of the signal, the Prime Ascendant. Older than any construct. Stronger than any ship, the one they all drew power from, and Earth? Earth was already on the way, because the judgment wasn't complete. Not yet. There was one more truth left to face, one more name to cross off, and the war of gods was about to end. At the center of the Lithari expanse, hidden behind a web of collapsed stars and layered gravitational veils, lay the last sanctuary of the Ascendant, a system older than memory, a place so dense with reality anchors that light itself hesitated, and within its core orbiting a silent neutron star hovered the origin of everything, the Prime Ascendant. Not a ship, not a being, a construct of pure will and intelligence, layered consciousness drawn from civilizations long consumed. It pulsed in silence, larger than moons, its surface shifting with thoughts not meant for biological minds. The Ascendant had once drawn their strength from this source. It was their anchor, their temple, their god. And now Earth was here. But Earth didn't arrive with an armada. Just one vessel, the TRV Judgment. No insignias, no glowing hull, just matte black silence, gliding through the gravity fields like it belonged there, as if this place had always waited for it. The galaxy watched, every species, every world, every station tuned in, holding its breath. And then the Prime Ascendant spoke, not with words but with sensation, fear, weight, a crushing pressure of existence as if all thought and time bent toward its presence. You cannot undo what we are, it resonated. We are the shape of history. We are the silence that follows collapse. We are your authors. The TRV Judgment responded with 5 words, quiet, clean, final. We write our own ending. Then, Earth fired, but not a weapon. It released a signal, coded in a quantum lattice drawn from ancient human language, harmonized with gravitational pulses. It wasn't an attack, it was a mirror. The signal reflected the Prime Ascendant's own consciousness back at itself, stripped of ritual, stripped of power, shown without illusion, and for the first time in its existence the Prime Ascendant hesitated. It saw what it had become, not a god, not a guide, just a hollow echo of creation, a shell bloated with stolen minds and withered glory, and in that moment of clarity, the Judgment finished its purpose, a single pulse. No light, no sound, just the sensation of a door closing. The Prime Ascendant collapsed in on itself, folding not into death but into completion. The source was gone, and with it, The Ascendant, faded. Across the galaxy, their ships fell silent. Their constructs lost cohesion, their temples cracked, their lie dissolved, and Earth did not celebrate. The TRV judgment turned away, its mission fulfilled. No monuments, no claims, no voice shouting over the void, because Earth never wanted to rule, only to restore the truth, and when the gods demanded worship, Earth didn't pray. It responded. The War of Gods was over, not with celebration, not with the rise of a new throne, but with quiet skies and a galaxy left blinking in the silence that followed. No flags were planted, no worlds were claimed. The Terran fleet simply vanished. The ships returned to their hidden docks. The signals ceased, the protocols powered down, and Earth once again grew still. But this time, the galaxy did not forget. They had seen the myth awaken. They had seen the silence answer. They had seen gods fall, not to rage or revenge, but to judgment. And that judgment left a mark deeper than any weapon ever could. In the years that followed, the galaxy changed. Old religions quietly retired their temples to the Ascendant. New treaties were signed, ones written not in fear but in humility. And the name Earth became something else entirely. Not a threat. Not a mystery. A standard. The Assembly reformed their laws of uplift and intervention. Worlds once overlooked were given new voices, and in classrooms from the core to the fringe, students were taught a single phrase. Power is not purpose. Purpose is what follows when power is denied. And Earth? It said nothing. It didn't rise to claim the seat of gods. It didn't correct the narratives being written in its name. It simply returned to what it had always done best. It watched. For Earth understood something the rest of the galaxy was still learning. That judgment isn't just about punishment. It's about truth. And truth doesn't demand praise. It only requires that you face it. In time, others would forget again. They always did, but not completely, because carved into the foundation of a new galactic archive, in a language older than any living tongue, there remained one last record, unaltered, unchallenged, and untouched. When the false gods returned, Earth did not hesitate, it did not beg, it did not boast, it acted, not to destroy, but to remind us. Some forces don't rise to rule, they rise to restore. And with that truth, the stars turned again.